continue? Yeah, so we were discussing the earliest time you can daven Shacharis, and the latest time you can daven Shacharis. The preferable time, the earliest time, or in Pei Tes Aleph. We're in the middle of the Mishnah Berurah. We'll just summarize first. The earliest time you can daven, the preferable time is sunrise, which is called Netzach Hama. Right? There's you have the reason you have all these times is it's a debate. When does the morning start? Does the morning start at dawn, or does it start at sunrise? Like today, the fast started from dawn, which was 5 whatever, but sunrise was over an hour later. But the preferable time to daven Shacharis is from Netzach Hama, which is sunrise. Now, if you davened past dawn before Netzach Hama, you shouldn't have done that necessarily, but you fulfilled your obligation and you wouldn't have to pray again. Now, there's another time called Misha Yakir. That is the earliest time to put on tefillin. That time is between dawn and sunrise, and that's when there's enough light out that you can tell the difference between, you can recognize your friend from about 6 feet away. The first becomes dawn, then is Misha Yakir, and then is sunrise. And Misha Yakir is the earliest time you can say Shema, and the earliest time you can put on tefillin. It's like what we used to do at Chabad. I'm sure they still do it. They start at 6:10. So in the winter months, you can't really put on tefillin at 6:10. So what they would do is they would daven up until like Yishtabach, and then everyone would put on their tefillin, and then they would say Shema, and we would end up davening Shemona Esrei, way before sunrise, but it was after Misha Yakir, and because people had to go to work, so it was a time of pressing need. So now let's go on to the latest time. What's the latest time you can daven? So from the second line in the Shulchan Aruch, we'll start there. It says V'nimshach zmana ad sof arba shos shehu shlish hayom. Now you can daven Shacharis until the end of 4 hours of the day, which is a third of the day. Right? And again, we said this is seasonal hours, not the regular 60-minute hours. V'imta oy avar. Now let's say you didn't daven until the end of the first 4 hours. So imta oy avar, if you made a mistake or you were over, v'espalo acher dalet shos ad chatzos, and you prayed from after 4 hours until chatzos, which is midday.
Okay.
Hi. Oh, great. We're just talking about the latest time that you can daven Shacharis.
Uh-huh.
So we said the latest time is at end of 4 hours, but if you daven after the 4 hours, you can and you pray until chatzos. Afal pi she'ein lo schar ketfila bizmana schar tefila mi'ika. That if you daven after 4 hours of the day, but you daven before midday, which I don't know, it's like around 12:31 now. So you don't get a mitzvah for quote unquote davening in the proper time, but you get a mitzvah of davening. So you get like a lower level of fulfilled of obligation of praying.
What do you mean? You daven earlier?
Right. Let's say if you woke up late and it's past the time you're supposed to daven Shacharis, which is the end of 4 hours. Let's just take the easiest 12-hour day when it's 12 hours of a day. Hello, welcome. We're continuing from last week. The latest time to daven.
What?
We're talking about the latest time to daven.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
All right.
So you know what Alan Harper used to say? Basketball, hockey. I thought it was like Shema. Basketball is 4 quarters. That's Shema. So you have the first quarter. And I thought Shemona Esrei is hockey. 3 periods. You have the first third of the day.
Right. No. It's
I thought
first.
you said Shemona Esrei first quarter.
Oh no, it's first 4 hours, which is the first third of the day.
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
That's the time you're supposed to daven.
Okay.
But if you didn't daven at that time and you daven after, so you don't get a mitzvah of davening at the right time, but you get a mitzvah of davening. It's like a lower level of a mitzvah.
Yeah, I asked you when you could put on tefillin last week. You said practically all day, right?
Right. The best time is to put on when you daven Shacharis, but you can still...
I do it at my house, yeah.
Rabbi Braunspiegel and I were just at Torah Links, and someone put on tefillin at Mincha, because he didn't get a chance in the morning.
Oh,
So you still get the mitzvah. So he actually davened Mincha with tefillin, or he put on before. Yeah, Tish B'Av we do it.
These kids.
Because I learned to them in Alep and Kollel.
Yeah.
I good teachers.
So what happened to us?
Okay. So the Ramah continues. Va'achar chatzos. Now after midday, asur lehispalo tefillah shachris. it's forbidden to daven shacharis after midday. The reason is because after midday, that's really the time to daven mincha. So you can't be davening shacharis.
So what is
once time
midday?
daven mincha.
12 o'clock or what?
So no, midday means that if you let's take now. Now is the fall is a bad example. Let's take the summer when you have sunrise. Let's say is at 5 a.m. and sunset is at 8 p.m. So the way you figure out midday,
divide the hour.
right? You take however many hours that is and divide it by 12, and then the midpoint of that is going to be midday. So it could be like 1 p.m. Now it's actually probably around 12ish because we're about the first day of fall. It's equal about 12 and 12.
Day's getting short.
Yeah, right when it gets short.
Stuff.
And it, yeah, okay. So that's what we read. So after midday, so that's already the time that you can almost start davening mincha, right? We're going to discuss exactly when you can daven mincha and stuff like that. Now let's go back to the Mishnah Berurah, who's going to explain that line that we just read and vav. So you see in the bottom is a vav. So like the last, second to last line there in the column. So it says, "O avar, rotza lomar, shebemezid shaha es hatfila." He says we're talking about also where he prayed, where he made a mistake and didn't daven at the right time, or he did it on purpose, right? Is there going to be a difference if you accidentally overslept, or if you purposely didn't daven for whatever reason? You didn't feel like it. So Mishnah Berurah is going to discuss that. Afal pikein yatsi yedei chovas tefila, af shehaisa shelo b'zmana. So he says, nevertheless, even if you did it on purpose, you fulfill your obligation if you daven before midday. V'hu adin shalachatchila im lo hispalo mikodem tzarich lehispalo achar arba shos ad chatzos rak she'ein lo schar ketfila b'zmana. And he says also, now he's just discussing that the way the Shulchan Aruch phrased it was that if you happen to have done this, if you happen to have prayed before midday, after 4 hours, you fulfilled the obligation. But he's saying it's not only if you happen to do it, this is also the law. I mean, if you call the rabbi and say, hey, it's past 11 o'clock, can I still daven? The rabbi will tell you yes. Now, the Mishnah Berurah now is going to discuss that there's going to be a difference what you have to do if you did it on purpose or if you did it by accident. He says, "V'tov sheyispal az b'toras nadava." If you did it on purpose, you should do it you should daven as a tefillas nadava. I'll explain what that is in a second. Ki yesh poskim shesovrim debehezid ad arba shos shuv lo matzil yispal klal al kain yispal v'yasna she'im etzaradin hu pater hu b'toras nadava. Okay, now there's something called a tefillas nadava. Did you know you're allowed? Back in the day, we don't really do this anymore. People would daven extra times Shemona Esrei, right? We just daven Shachris Mincha Mar, but back in the day, if you wanted, you can make a voluntary prayer called tefillas nadava. But you're only supposed to do it if you have intent, you have kavana, and you're thinking about every single word that you're saying in the prayer, because why in the world are you adding prayers if you're just going to space out? So the only time you were supposed to do it is if you had intent and you really focused on it and you really had a lot of meaning for you when you daven. Now, since nowadays we really don't have such great intent, right? Even when the times we're supposed to daven, we don't daven so well. We don't really have intent, so we don't do this tefillas nadava anymore. Now, there's one situation when we do it. Let's say you're not sure if you're supposed to daven, right? Let's say you can't remember if you said a certain insertion for the day. It's a holiday, not a holiday. It's whatever it is. It's you forgot. You're not sure if you said an insertion for a special day, and you're not sure if you're supposed to daven over. So what you can do is you can daven and you can make a condition that it'll be a voluntary prayer. Meaning, you say, Hashem, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be davening right now. So if I really have to daven, let this count as Shacharis. But if I'm not supposed to daven, let this be a tefillas nadava, a voluntary prayer. So this way you're good, because either you had to daven and you fulfilled your obligation, or you didn't have to daven, and you did a voluntary prayer. Now, even though we don't do the voluntary prayer now, in this situation, because you're in a bind, you're allowed to rely on it. So, in this case, now, why do we have to do it? Let's say you didn't daven on purpose, because there's a debate amongst the Rishonim. If you didn't daven Shachris on purpose, and it's past the time, past the 4 hours, the third of the day, are you allowed to daven again? Now, what's the machlokas? There's a law in Shulchan Aruch that if you forget to daven Shacharis, you daven Mincha twice. You make up for it. But that's only if you missed it by accident. if you missed the Shacharis on purpose, you don't daven mincha again.
What if you're tired? Is that considered on purpose?
Again, it would probably depend, like if you're really tired or you're just saying you're tired. It's a good question.
If you're 87 and tired.
If you're 87 and tired, it sounds like a good excuse. If you're 33 like me and tired, you're probably just making it up. So, but yeah. So if you, right, okay, fine. So that's if you didn't daven Shacharis, you daven Mincha twice. Now, so some Rishonim say, well, that's the same thing here. If you didn't daven Shacharis before the first 4 hours, what's the difference between davening Mincha twice and just davening Shacharis again until midday? Right? It should be the same thing. But if that's the case, that only applies if you didn't daven by accident, or it was circumstances beyond your control. But that halacha doesn't apply on purpose. So according to those Rishonim, if you didn't daven on purpose, you're not allowed to daven after 4 hours. However, other Rishonim don't say that. They say, really, there's two mitzvahs of davening Shacharis. There's the mitzvah to daven in the proper time, and that extends a third of the day. But there's another mitzvah of Shacharis, which goes until midday. So even if you did it on purpose, according to those Rishonim, you'd be allowed to daven until Chatzos. Now, since we're not sure, we want to worry about those opinions. What we do is that if you didn't daven on purpose, if you get up till Chatzos, you can daven, but you should have in mind that if you're really not supposed to be davening now, because the halacha is like those other Rishonim, then this will be a tfilas nadava, a voluntary prayer. So this way you cover all the grounds. Now, can I make the question more complicated for you? What happens if you, on Shabbos, there's a rule, we don't daven voluntary prayers on Shabbos. You only do that during the week. So what if you purposely woke up late on Shabbos and you didn't daven Shacharis at the proper time? What do you do then? So that's a big discussion. That's not discussed in the Mishnah Berurah right here. But from the Svarim that I've seen, from reliable poskim, it seems that you should daven. You should daven. Because really, he says the main halacha is that you're allowed to daven even if you missed on purpose. But if you and it's only like to fulfill all of the requirements that we have this thing in mind to do a voluntary Shemona Esrei. Now, just as an aside, this is only for Shemona Esrei. The brachos of Shema, those are a different halacha. So it sounds like from what I've seen that the brachos of Shema you shouldn't say if you didn't daven on purpose. Now again, this is only if you didn't daven on purpose. If you didn't daven by accident, you for sure should daven until Chatzos. And I think we'll end here.
Okay. Go.
Thanks for coming. Shkach.
So this is your second